The cockpit was silent. Oxygen masks dangled, alarms blared, and terrified passengers clutched their seats as the crew exchanged helpless glances. The captain's voice had failed. The co-pilot was frozen. Everyone thought it was the end. But then, breaking the chaos, a young woman in row 12 stood, walked to the cockpit, and with a calm voice began speaking into the radio, in code. And in that moment, hope was reborn. The first thing anyone noticed was the sound. Not the steady hum of engines, not the calm voice of a captain reassuring passengers, but the sharp, mechanical alarm cutting through the cabin. In row 12, a young woman felt her chest tighten as oxygen masks fell from the overhead compartments. People gasped, children cried, and whispers of fear rippled through the aisles. Something was very wrong. Inside the cockpit, the captain was fighting for control. His voice cracked through the intercom just once, shaky and uncertain, before going silent. The co-pilot, pale and frozen, stared at the flickering instruments. Communication with the tower had failed. Static filled the radio. The crew tried to stay composed, but panic began to creep into their eyes. They knew the procedure. In a crisis, the cockpit had to coordinate with air traffic control. But every attempt to send their mayday call returned with nothing but garbled distortion. No one on the ground could hear them. For the passengers, the silence was worse than any announcement. Silence meant the crew had lost contact. Silence meant they were flying blind. In the back, a man gripped his wife's hand, whispering a prayer. A teenager sobbed into her mother's shoulder. And somewhere in the middle of that cabin sat a woman who didn't look frightened, only focused. Her eyes weren't darting like the others. She wasn't trembling. She was listening. The crew moved down the aisle, trying to calm the passengers, repeating words they didn't fully believe themselves. Everything is under control, they said. But their voices cracked, betraying them. Back in the cockpit, the situation grew worse. Altitude warnings blared. The captain tapped the MIC again, desperately trying to reach the tower. Nothing. He slammed his fist against the console. That's when the woman stood up. Row 12. Calm. Determined. Her voice cut through the chaos. Let me speak to the tower. The nearby passengers turned, bewildered. A flight attendant rushed to block her. Please sit down. We need you to remain calm. But she didn't flinch. She simply repeated, steady as stone, you can't reach them because you're not using the code. Let me through. The attendant froze. The words made no sense, at least, not to anyone else. But the woman's tone carried something rare in moments like this, certainty. And in that instant, without anyone realizing it yet, the fate of the flight had already shifted. The cockpit door cracked open, something passengers weren't supposed to see mid-flight. But rules meant little now. The young woman from row 12 stepped inside, her presence commanding in a way that silenced even the frantic breathing of the co-pilot. The captain turned toward her, sweat glistening on his brow. This is restricted. Please, go back to your seat. But she didn't back down. Her eyes swept over the failing instruments, the blinking warnings, and the useless headset clutched in the captain's shaking hand. She reached out and took it. You're transmitting on open band civilian, she said, calm but firm. They'll never hear you through the interference. Switch to encrypted frequency. Code Sierra Tango 4. The co-pilot blinked, stunned. What? How do you even? Just do it, she snapped, her voice cutting through his hesitation. The captain, desperate enough to try anything, keyed in the changes she rattled off. The static shifted. A faint, muffled voice broke through. Unidentified flight. Do you copy? Repeat, do you copy? For the first time in what felt like forever, there was life on the other side. The captain's hand shook as he tried to answer, but the woman pulled the MIC gently from his grip. Her voice changed, measured, professional, and filled with coded brevity. This is Flight Bravo to 1. Emergency status. Request immediate vectoring. Authentication Delta Charlie. The line went silent. Then, as if the world had just remembered them, the tower's reply came, urgent but controlled. Bravo to 1, authentication confirmed. Maintain present altitude. You're being tracked. Assistance inbound. The crew stared at her as though she'd just performed magic. The co-pilot whispered, almost to himself, You're not a passenger, are you? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she adjusted the dials, steadying the comms, and muttered, "Keep your hands steady on the yoke. They'll guide you in. Just follow their headings." In the cabin behind them, the alarms continued, but something subtle shifted. Fear began giving way to a fragile thread of hope. Flight attendants exchanged looks. A few passengers craned their necks, straining to catch glimpses of the stranger now commanding the cockpit. The captain finally asked the question everyone wanted to know. "Who are you?" Her eyes stayed on the instruments, her hands moving with the certainty of someone who had done this before. When she finally answered, her voice was steady, almost detached. "Once, I spoke this language every day. Now I'm speaking it again, for all of us." The tower came back on, crisp and clear. "Bravo to 1, we have you. Continue course. Rescue team standing by." The co-pilot leaned back, relief flooding his face. And yet, beneath the relief, there was something else, a new fear. Not of the failing plane. Not of the alarms. But of the quiet, mysterious woman who had just saved them with words no ordinary passenger should know. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Guided by the tower's precise commands, the aircraft steadied. The alarms quieted, though the tension in the cabin still hung thick. Passengers clutched their armrests, whispering prayers, but a strange calm began to ripple through the plane. In the cockpit, the mysterious woman remained at the controls, not flying, but guiding. Every time the captain hesitated, she supplied the exact phrase, the exact sequence of numbers, the exact code to bridge the gap between chaos and order. Vector to 320. Acknowledge on secure. Confirm approach pattern Lima. Transmit readiness code Alpha. The tower responded each time without hesitation, as though they knew her, as though they trusted her more than the uniformed men beside her. When the landing gear finally locked and the ground rushed closer, the woman leaned back, her job done. The captain's knuckles were still white on the yoke, but the worst was over. The wheels screeched against the runway, and the aircraft shuddered, slowing, until the plane finally rolled to a trembling stop. The cabin erupted. Passengers sobbed, hugged strangers, kissed the floor. Some cried out prayers of thanks. Others could only sit in stunned silence, processing that they were still alive. But in the cockpit, it was quiet. The captain set the brakes, exhaled for the first time in what felt like forever, and turned to her. "Who are you?" he asked again, softer this time. She hesitated, then finally spoke, her voice carrying both pride and a shadow of pain. "Once upon a time, I was an air intercept officer. Naval intelligence. I spoke to towers no one knew existed, in codes no one outside was ever supposed to hear. I walked away years ago. I thought that part of me was over." She paused, meeting his eyes. "Until today." The crew exchanged glances, realizing the enormity of what had just happened. This wasn't luck. This wasn't coincidence. The stranger who had saved their lives had once lived inside a world of shadows, secrecy, and codes. Word spread quickly through the cabin. By the time the doors opened and emergency vehicles surrounded the aircraft, passengers were whispering about her, the woman who had spoken in code, the one who had saved them when the crew couldn't. She didn't linger. As firefighters boarded and paramedics rushed in, she simply gathered her bag, nodded once to the captain, and slipped into the flow of disoriented passengers. The captain called out, almost desperate, "Wait, don't you want recognition? A medal? Something?" But she only shook her head. Not every story is meant to be told. And with that, she disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind nothing but whispers and a lingering question. Who was she really, and how many lives had she saved before this flight, without anyone ever knowing?